And welcome to everyone. Today our guest is Bkfc fighter Jensen, known for his famous stoppage last weekend. So, Chris, how are you feeling about the stoppage? I mean, how is the feel, right? Bare knuckle is pretty much great sport. It's now evolving. It's looking way better. And you scored well. It was pretty much a big pleasure to watch you.
Yeah, it's such an honor to be able to be a part of such a amazing sport and to watch it grow. But I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of emotions that I'm feeling from the other night. Hands down to Kyle McElroy, because he actually had me a little scared. Because of his pre-fight interviews and the way he talked. I mean, he talked like he was the Jackson Wink lost child of bare knuckle. So I was definitely intimidated. So when I was able to connect with that 2-3-2 right out the gate, I seen his eyes roll in the back of his head, and I threw all my form out, and I just turned it into a finishing brawl. And I was glad Dan stopped it, because at one time I had punched the cage or the ring. I missed him and hit the ring, and I broke my hand. So when I hit that ring, I broke my hand, and when I felt my hand broke, I was like, well, I better hit him with it again. Boom, and I just wanted to get the finish. But I was definitely relieved, and it was just such an overwhelming amount of emotions.
I know this could be a bit controversial question, but could you please show your hand to our fans?
Here it is.
Oh.
I can't. I can close this one, but you can see this finger's not even connected. It's free. There's no knuckle here. It's completely destroyed, and it's been like that for about 10 years of my career. But what it does is it created a calcium deposit here, and when I throw that overhand right, it just has no feeling, and it literally just stumps people. And you can see every time I touch his face, he got cut. And that's normally, that's kind of it. It's a strategy in bare knuckle, because we're not always just looking for that knockout. We'd like a doctor stoppage as well, because we can still get the win and get out of there without hurting ourselves.
All right. How did you prepare for the upcoming battle? You mentioned pre-fight talk. As much as I've seen, you're not a guy who talks too much, right?
No, I'm not really a big talker, just because I've had my mouth shut a few times in this sport. I tried to be a big talker a few times, and Chase Sherman knocked me out in 13 seconds. And everyone that always tries to get me to talk, they try to force me to do it. And I'm really not the type of person that can tell you about it. I'm more of the type of person that can show you, and that's kind of how we did. That's why I refused the after-fight interview. I really don't have much to say to anyone. I was just trying to make a statement after my last loss. And I know I've got some work to do, and I think I got about 2 more years of work before I'll be in the contendership. But hey, you never know what happens, and I'll fight anybody. So.
Can you discuss your training partners and people who helped you to prepare for this battle?
Yeah, so I handpicked my coaches. I've actually been in this sport. Well, I've been in combat sports for 20 years here in Tampa, and I consider myself one of the pioneers of MMA. I really started out. Half of the fighters on that card the other night were either trained with me at some point, or I promoted their fights. So I was lucky and fortunate enough that I could handpick who I trained, and I went after some guys that I liked, that I helped in their careers, like John Ortolani. He's got 25 mixed martial arts fights. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Hobson Mora. They train here in South Tampa Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. And I knew that he was a very disciplined, very patient, and very understanding person. And I'm really a problem student. I'm not the best MMA student. I'm not the best combative sports student, because I'll skip practice and I get off my diet. But this camp, I really, really was focused. I trained 8 weeks straight. I think I might have missed 3 days in the training camp. And then my second coach was one of my former students, a kid that I taught everything I knew, Mikhail Ferguson. And when I had those, then I had my best friend, and then I had my brother, who's a special forces. So I had a group of 4 men kind of keeping me, because it's mental. And with me, it's really 90% mental. As long as I'm mentally healthy, I can pretty much fight anybody for the win. So it was all about staying mentally healthy. I was swimming a lot. I didn't do a lot of running. I was very low impact on my body, except for my sparring sessions, except for my technique sessions. But when it came down to like hard cardio, I found alternatives like intense, like swimming, aerodyne bike, and things like that. So I'm 40 years old, so I have to train smarter, not harder.
Do you have a nickname? If you do, can you elaborate the background of it?
Yes, my nickname is actually Big Boy. There's two people that gave me that name, but the main person I want to touch on is Ultimate Fighter Season 5 contender Alan Berube. He was they called him Monster Lobster. He was on the same season as Nate Diaz and everybody. And I used to work for him and at a lobster restaurant, and he used to always call me, "Hey, big boy, let's go, big boy." And the reason why everyone called me Big Boy was because when I trained with the Gracies, at Gracie Tampa, I was a heavyweight, but I was fast. So every time I'd spar, people would be like, "Man, he's so fast for a big boy." And everyone kept calling me Big Boy, and I would get so upset because I thought they were calling me Fat Boy. But then it just stuck, Big Boy, Big Boy, Big Boy, and stuck and stuck. And it's been my nickname for about 20 years now. But then my wife's we're laying in the bed looking at some of the pre-fight pictures, the pictures of the fight. And my wife looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, you look like a jolly big boy." And there's actually a picture of me like this. And then I look at the big boy emblem here. It's a famous emblem that we have. And I'm literally making the same pose he is. So in fate and in the fight gods, my nickname is Big Boy.
Which was the first martial art you've trained?
Well, the first martial arts I ever trained was formal martial arts was definitely jiu-jitsu. It was Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I trained, I met Rob Kahn and Matt Arroyo and some real famous Gracie black belts they're just phenomenal instructors. I trained with them for a few years, and just on the mental toughness that jiu-jitsu gave me, and just the way that those guys trained me, prepared me all the way up till now from 15 years ago. So jiu-jitsu was my first ever thing, but I grew up, I was a minority in my neighborhood. I was the only white kid kind of in my neighborhood. And when I was a kid, we used to play football. And I didn't really understand racism because I was a military brat. I lived my grandfather was Air Force, and we lived next to an Air Force base. So there was every different nationality, every different race, everything. My best friend was black. My little first girlfriend was Korean. You know what I mean? So I didn't understand what racial profiling was or anything like that. So when I went and played football with some of my friends at 10 years old, all the other little kids were like beating me up and hitting me hard. And I just thought it was the game. I just thought, hey, we're playing football. Let's do it. Well, then one of my friends was like, "Hey, man, they're doing that because they don't like you because you're a white boy." And I was like, and I was so upset that they didn't like me because I thought they were my friends, that when I got the football at that point, I was so upset. My emotions were so overwhelming that I just started trucking kids. I literally just started flattening kids and running them over. And then I knew right then that my emotions lead me through fights. I get in fights in high school. I get in fights in middle school. I'd be scared, but I'd always win. And I just knew I was good at fighting. And so I took that into jiu-jitsu, and then MMA started getting popular. And I had some friends doing MMA. And so I needed a paycheck. So I started doing it. And in 2008, I became a professional, and then I did it for years. And so now here I am.
Which was the hardest MMA bout you've ever had? And can you say something about your first MMA fight? I mean, that's the moment you'll never forget, right?
Yeah, my first MMA fight was amazing. It was here in Tampa for the Real Fighting Championships. And I had trained my butt off for many years, like 4 or 5 years straight, and finally decided to take that MMA fight. It was a hometown thing. I fought a gentleman by the name of Chris Anderson. At the time was an up-and-coming heavyweight. He was a stud. I think he was like 2-1 at the time, and I was a debuter, so I was super, super intimidated. But with me, what happens is if I train hard enough, if I train and I train right in my camp, I have the confidence of a Spartan. So I went in there and won it in the second round by submission. And it was that was the easiest fight I ever had. My hardest MMA fight I ever had was a 13-second knockout by Chase Sherman. We know Chase Sherman is the former champion, and I fought him in MMA. It was one of his first fights. And they kind of, sneaky promotion kind of told me he never had any fights before, blah, blah. They were just trying to get me to sign the bout. And I took it, and I went in there with confidence, missed a couple of those big, crazy shots like I was throwing on Kyle, and Chase answered me with an elbow and put me to sleep. And that was probably my hardest. I didn't fight for 4 years after that. And then I fought again in 2017, and I got a 16-second knockout. And that's when I retired. And then I'm sitting out there in North Dakota in the oil field, and I see Ken Shamrock doing a bare knuckle fight at the casino where I'm at, and it's such a small town. I'm like, "Hey, what's the deal, man? I want to do bare knuckle." So then he put me on bare knuckle. Then they hadn't done a show again. Then I moved back to Florida, and Bkfc is huge. And then so now I've been just doing the Bkfc. But my hardest fight was definitely that 13-second knockout, just because mentally, physically, it really tore me up. So.
How did your bare knuckle debut look? You know, bare knuckle debut.
Oh, my bare knuckle debut was with Valor and Ken Shamrock. And my first opponent was a guy named John Carmona. He was a boxer, but he fell out. And then they got me Zach Thumb. Zach Thumb was a 4-4 MMA fighter, national champion, or I don't think he was national champion, but he was an All-American wrestler. And he was one of Brock Lesnar's former sparring partners. And they changed my opponent in 2 weeks. So when I went into this Valor thing, this was a pit. I mean, this was like something from Lionheart. I mean, there was no ring. They wanted us to wear spandex. I mean, it was like some old school, no hand wraps just around your wrists. And I went in there and I executed pretty much the same game plan I had on this fight. I just wanted to chop the tree down. I didn't want to knock it down with one shot. And I went in there and won it in 1:40, another first round stoppage. And it's now I'm 2-1. So it's kind of exciting. My bare knuckle loss to Dylan Kleckler, honestly, I have to, honestly, I'm not trying to give my pull anything or make any excuses. That dude's a stud, but I barely even trained for that fight. I literally hadn't trained. I didn't do any. I mean, I trained barely. I knew that I was going to probably get smashed. I knew I was being brought in there to get smashed. So I was really just doing it for the opportunity. And I wasn't even going to fight again after that. But I thought about how I kind of just like gave up and was like, that's not me. And so that's why when I called Bkfc and said I'd like to fight again, they said, well, yeah, we would love to have you on. And they found me this opponent. And this guy was talking a good game, man. He was talking like he was Kyle McGregor. I thought this dude was going to come in here and leap off of the fence like Ben, whatever, Anthony Pettis. I didn't know what he was going to do. And I knew that I got into his head through social media. I knew that I had been getting into his head through social media because I made weight at 262 and I was supposed to be 265. Then the next day I posted a picture saying I was 282 and the guy freaked out. He was scared. I know. And I did that because I knew he was watching my social media and I knew I could manipulate him in the mind game. And that's sometimes part of my game. And I mean, this is combat sports. And we can't do groin shots and we can't hit you in the back of the head, but maybe we can mentally get inside their brain,
And what was exactly your game plan for your bare knuckle fight that you've just won?
So we had me and my team spent 6 weeks coming up with a game plan. And we really wanted to simplize it and make it very basic so that I didn't get confused under pressure and that my mind would still be able to process the calls. And we didn't want to be shouting out calls that our opponent and our cornermen would be able to recognize and counter. So we came in with a secret language that we had, and my corners were shouting out phrases to me that would make me remember what to do. And our basic game plan was this. We've been studying bare knuckle and everything is on distance. We don't want to get hit because it causes damage no matter what. So we wanted to utilize our jab. We thought his reach was longer, but we found out the fight day that I had a 4-inch reach advantage. So at that point, you saw me sticking my face out there because I knew that I was judging his distance. And once he barely touched me with a jab one time, he barely touched me with it, and I had judged the distance at that second, and that's when I caught him with that big hook and that big overhand right, because at that point, we were setting everything up with the jab, and then we were going to set everything up with the jab and finish everything with the 1-2-1-2. So just the simplest basic things, like Josh Burns did to Chris Sarro. The 1-2-1-2 is dangerous in bare knuckle. And what happens is it overwhelms your opponent, especially a big-bodied guy like me with a big reach. I can overwhelm them. And if I 1-2-1-2, they cover up. And then at that point, I could start slipping to the body. I didn't have to do that with Kyle. It was basically like a bar brawl, but I was prepared to. So our game plan in this was definitely to utilize the jab and to stay simple. We had the KISS factor. Keep it simple, stupid.
How does one day in your life look like?
Holy shit. Excuse my language. I can promise you this. If you spent one day with me, if you came and spent one day with me, you probably wouldn't want to go home. Because, I mean, a day with Big Boy is, so I tell my wife that we live like tourists. We're locals that live like tourists. I go fishing every day. I go to an Olympic-sized swimming pool and swim every day. Now, after this fight, everywhere I go, everybody's congratulating me. I just do so much. I smoke about 5 blunts a day, and I'm very proud that I'm medical marijuana prescription, and that's all I do. I don't take any painkillers. I don't take anything like that. And I just have a great life. I mean, as a matter of fact, I also have 3 beautiful daughters, and I don't only have custody of one, and I rarely get to get all 3 of them. But if you can see, they're actually sleeping right here on an air mattress. And I have them right now. So when you get to take your 3 daughters and go do things, of course, I don't smoke in front of them, but if you take my daughters and they don't want to go home, and their moms are just the most amazing mothers, and they're the best, but I get to be the cool guy. And a day with Big Boy is probably more fun than hanging out with one of those millionaire celebrities. I can guarantee you that. So it's a crazy lifestyle. I live a crazy life. Everyone knows me, and everyone that sees this that knows me will definitely contest that I'm an interesting character.
Well, that's outstanding. That's one of the best answers I've ever get. I really like the answer. What are your plans for the future in Bkfc?
Well, I really would like. I've been single fighting. I mean, technically at this point, I'm a free agent because I've only been signing single fight contracts. But I personally love what David Feldman's doing with the BKFC. I think that his approach of bringing in these platformers to get more eyes on us was a brilliant idea. I also think that he's revolutionizing promoting by doing that. And it's not that he's reinventing the wheel. He's just doing what most people wouldn't do. So honestly, I really, 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 really would love to stay with BKFC. I love the organization. I love the people. I love the matchmakers. I love everyone that has to do with BKFC. It's just, though, that this is a business for me now. This is Chris Big Boy Jensen is a business. So I'm not just a fighter anymore. I'm a business, and I have to look out for, the best thing for my business and for my brand. And as soon as I won that fight the other night, I was getting phone calls. I was getting call outs, which is something normal to happen. But I also got a phone call from 2 of the best fighters in the world.
Sorry. My connection broke for a sec. You got a call from 2. Can you continue, please?
Yes, I got a phone call from 2, the number 1 and number 2 bare knuckle heavyweight fighters in the world. I don't want to drop any names, but we all know who he is. The number 1 guy who is Balor. He called me and gave me told me one of the most inspirational things. In the best British accent I could ever give, he was just like, "I'm so happy for you, mate. That dude was a cheapy motherfucker, So, and he told me some great things, and he told me what he's fixing to do. And those guys are my friends, and I consider my friends. Then LJ messaged me and was like, "Yeah, man," and they're fixing. I mean, there's rumors about that, and I'm not going to drop any bombs, but it was nice to hear from those guys. I created a bond with them when we were at the first Valor in North Dakota, because I lived there. So when they flew all those fighters in for Valor, I lived in North Dakota, so I was like their go-to for everything. I was the one that got them their gear. If they needed anything, I got them. And Mark and my wife hit it off. My wife's a theater teacher, so she started talking in her British accent, and Godbeer and it was like, "Man, that's pretty good, that's a really good accent." And then she'd do a little Cockney and some proper English, and so it was fun, and we created a great friendship, and I'm very happy to see those guys where they are. But honestly, I really feel like BKFC is my home. I've never experienced so much love. I've never experienced a second chance like I did, and I'm just so grateful for the BKFC, and I'm really looking to see if maybe they could sign me on maybe a multiple fight contract so that I know I have a job and that I can continue to work and make these plans so I don't have to find her day to day,
That is outstanding, pretty much inspirational story. Would you like to greet someone or to give a shout out to somebody that we forgot to mention? Or maybe would you like to add something else about yourself that the crowd could know?
Oh, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, most first and foremost, I want to thank God. I mean, I'm not the super most spiritual person, but I do understand that there's definitely a creator out there who definitely has a will for me. And when I do right, good things happen to me. When I do bad shit happens to me. So I just want to thank God for having patience with me and just giving me all the chances that he's given me. Then my wife just put up with me for 8 weeks. She's a school teacher. So she was in summer school, but when summer school ended, I was in like my 6th week of training, and she kind of became my coach. Like she was making me get out of bed and feeding me, and kept a big calendar on the wall right here of all the training sessions that we had. So my wife was my rock. My kids, my daughters, Mackenzie, Aaliyah, and Ariana, they were at the fight with me the other night, and that was probably one of the best feelings I've ever felt in my life, is for my little girls to see me win. And that's what it was all about. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the win. It was about my friends and family seeing me and doing what I do and just proving to everyone that I can do it. And I thank them, my coaches, John, Donnie, Steph, Hawaii, my parents, everybody, just all the people, all my fans. They motivated me to do this. I'm 40 years old, man, and this shit is not easy. It's not easy to get up every day and have to eat shit. I'm a heavyweight. I smoke weed. I want to eat cupcakes. I want to eat brownies, but I couldn't for these whole 8 weeks. I had to eat chicken and broccoli, and it just was so hard mentally. But this camp, I have to thank everyone, man. Everyone that helped me. No judges needed. Pro Health, Dr. Doug, Andy Hicks, and everybody just hooked it up, and everyone was there for me. Not only did they help me monetarily, but they helped me mentally by supporting me and just making sure I stayed focused. And then everybody that watched the fight, everybody that watched it, everybody who's criticized it, everyone who's praised it, I thank you so much. I love all of you. My haters, you are the best. You guys are what keep me going. And for my fans, I love all of you. And I thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great day. I will start creating video now. Hope to have it in the next 2-3 hours. Just to create it, I will send you, okay?
Thank you so much, man. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Christopher. All right. Goodbye.